Hello, everybody. It's Donna Cravata, and we're back for our first interview for 2026. We had a little break. And today we have Amy Collette. She's an editor, book coach, and an author. And she guides soulful visionaries to share their transformational stories. Her mission is to nurture and advocate for the voices of transformation who leave a legacy of positive impact. The core of Amy's business philosophy is simple. Your unique perspective can lead others to their own healing and expansion. Amy wrote her first book, The Gratitude Connection, after discovering how to lift herself out of constant anxiety. As a career writer and editor, she began to help others publish their personal development books and realized that most new writers needed support at the idea stage of their book journey, not just at the end. So, Unleash Your Inner Author course and coaching program were born from that need. And she's worked with tons of authors since then. And she's also known as the Soul Message Catalyst because she believes that storytelling is the magic in human connection. And I'm right there with you. Welcome, Amy.
Thanks, Donna. I know we have so much in common, and storytelling is definitely one of those.
Yeah, I mean, it's everything, and it's more important now than it ever was. So I'd love to
Yeah.
dig into this topic if you're open to play.
Let's do it. It's one of my
Okay.
favorite topics.
All right. Is there anything that you want to say about you and your work before we get rolling?
I think just to tie it into storytelling, Donna, where, storytelling has become more and more important in my work, both as a writer and as a book's catalyst, a storytelling catalyst for others. Because we not only share our stories with others, we have to work through those stories ourselves first, right?
Yeah.
And even though we think we have, there are always other levels. And I find that even with stories I revisit from my past, that, those stories still have something to tell me, to teach me,
Yeah.
and so does your story and everyone's story. So the more we can get out of them personally, the more we can share and the bigger impact we can make when we share those stories.
Yeah. Like one of the things that I think about often is, when people are reluctant to share their story for one reason or another, the thing that's triggering them about that story, whether it be a positive trigger or negative trigger, um, is the thing that's going to trigger somebody else too. And that's going to be the thing that stands out. So, like that work
Yeah.
of, first of all, remembering the story because, we're like 50s, 60s, 70s, you start forgetting things. And a lot of life is like, it's in, the rear view mirror. And, you just put things aside for one reason or another. And it's like, oh, I didn't even remember I did that 25 years ago. So first you have to remember them. And then after you remember them, like what's that exchange that you have with people when they're kind of like preparing? Because I mean, do you work with a lot of first time authors, or is there a mix of first time, second time, third time authors that you work with?
Yeah, there's a mix, but every new book is a different experience.
It is.
And I always call the book journey a journey of spiritual growth,
Yeah.
because it doesn't matter how many books you've written, even if they're on similar topics, you're going to explore. What you're doing is you're asking to go deeper within so that you can bring that impact. Like you said, what triggers you is going to trigger someone else. And that's where the goodness is, right? It's
Mhm.
not just, the point is not just to dig up the pain or to remember the trauma or to relive it. It's to pull out the transformation. What has that led you to? What has it taught you? What has it opened your heart and your mind to? Because
Mhm.
I know one thing that we both agree on too is that storytelling is where people connect. It's where
Yes.
humans really connect. And that's exactly what you're talking about when you're working through a story yourself and then sharing it.
Mhm.
If it hits you in the heart or the gut, it's going to hit them too. And so,
Yeah.
how are you going to help them work through that when it does hit them?
Yeah, and that now becomes the book, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the essence of what you're here to share with them.
Yeah. And how do you see people change through this process?
Well, I'll tell you a little story.
Tell me a story. Let's just have story time.
So I had an author. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if we're talking about stories, let's tell stories. So I had an author come to me and she said, the book is all but done. All I've got to do is get it out of my head and onto the page. Easy, right? And it's easy to laugh at because, we've been there, right? We've probably thought the same things, right? It's all right there. You've already lived it. What's the big deal? But as she started to write it, she was unpacking all the stories. And part of the process too is unpacking the stories behind the stories that probably aren't going to make it into the book, but they're part of your personal story. And you've got to kind of tease those out to find out, what do I want to share, what's worth sharing, and what do I still maybe need to work through.
Yeah.
So that's what comes up a lot, is the story behind the story. And those generational things, the family systems things that come up for you as you're writing your book. And what it does, it may slow you down a little bit as an author. But what I see, especially with this author, was that she had to take a step back. And that was a lot of our coaching time, was actually
Mm,
supporting her through that emotional journey
mhm,
so that she could stand very confidently in her voice, in her experience, and say, this is what I want to share. This is my transformation and the transformation that I hope for my readers as well,
mhm,
right? So she had to take a little step back from that go, go, go that she came in with, just getting it out of her head and onto the page, but actually working through and going deeper and making the book much more valuable for her readers because she did that work herself.
yeah. One of the things that I do, because I usually like work on the marketing side after the publishing. I don't really like to be part of launches. I prefer to do like, come to me after you've done your launch, and then let's really get to work and build something
Right.
that is sustainable, that can build a business around your book. And one of the first things I asked was, what was edited out of your book that you wish
Mhm.
wasn't? And that's where we start with their marketing.
Yeah. So what do you see that does for authors?
Relief, because
Ah,
it's a Sophie's Choice moment when the editor cuts something out of your book that you feel is so integral to your story, but it really doesn't belong in the book. But now that can support the book in the
yeah.
marketing side, and it extends the story.
Mhm. Yeah. Because when your readers really do connect with you, they feel like they have a personal relationship with you. And they
Yeah.
do in some way because you have been so upfront with them, right? You've been vulnerable and shared your heart. And so they feel like they can trust you, they want to know you, and they fall a little bit in love with you, right? So then when you're speaking, when you're doing your marketing after the book is written, that's when you can even go deeper with your
Yeah.
readers and
Yeah.
invite them even more into your world.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such an interesting experience, because there's that moment after the launch that there's like, it's like the cutting of the umbilical cord, right? We're not connected anymore. It's now out in the world. Anything could happen.
Right. Right. Yeah, it can
And
be a little scary as an author.
yeah, and what I've witnessed is that authors need a little like buffer time post launch to kind of integrate where these stories are now, they're not only theirs. they're out in
Yeah.
the world and they don't know where they're going to land and who's going to see them and read them and hear them and be impacted by them. And that's an adjustment period.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting insight, Donna, because I always say that your book is actually, and your story, any of your stories, are mirrors for other people,
Yeah.
right? Where you get to kind of say, this is who I am, and allows them, gives them permission to look more deeply within themselves, to say, okay, yeah, that sounds familiar. This I can really connect with Amy or Donna or whoever it is that you're reading, and say, yeah, I've been through that. I can relate to that. Maybe I could see it differently.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I don't know if you see this also, but like going, like I've kind of over the years, I've worked through every stage of, the writing, publishing, editing process, marketing process. I just really love the marketing process of it. But, just seeing that relationship with the story change through the various, you know, like pieces of this project. Because what gets me is like first, like they come in thinking 2 months, 2 months, 3 months tops. I'm gonna have a bestseller in my hand. That's a nice fantasy. Sit down. Let me tell you a story.
Yeah.
It takes
Yeah.
time. It takes time.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just like anything worth doing, any big project always takes a little longer, takes a little more effort than you may originally plan for.
Yeah, yeah.
So I've seen that. But as well as that buffer space after the book is done, I just keep thinking about this concept, Donna, because I think it's a little bit like a vulnerability hangover, right?
Mm, very
Where you said,
much.
okay, I've opened my heart. I've really been vulnerable. I've told my story, and then have that time to take a break from it. But now what's so great is that it is out in the world and you
Yeah.
can let it go. You don't have to hold
Yes.
on to it anymore as
Yes.
the author, right? Because you've given it flight in public space, and now it's part of other people's story too, which is
Yeah.
just really astounding because
Yeah.
as authors, we get to have that influence across space and time, right? Like our experience that we may have experienced decades ago can still help other people into the future. And that's pretty
Hmm.
mind-blowing. That's pretty exciting. And when people can think about that in terms of their marketing, they know their story is continuing to have an impact and a positive effect throughout their readership. And people are handing it to their neighbor or buying it for their mom or their sister,
Hmm.
or, that it has, it's this legacy is just growing.
It is. It is a legacy. I like that frame. And you don't know where it's going to go, and that's one of the things that always gets me excited for new authors, or any author that has a new book, is that their life is about to change in ways that they cannot even begin to anticipate, because the book is now this extension of
Right.
themselves that is taking on an entire entity of its own.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
some of that isn't
Yeah.
going
And
to be
what's cool
positive.
is that yeah. And how do you mean?
Not every review is going to be great, and not every, like, it might trigger somebody in a bad way where they need help. Um, One of the things that I will do with authors that write something that might be triggering to people is I introduce them to therapists that they can introduce people to if
Mhm.
the situation arises that they can't
Yeah.
handle. Um, but it's not always going to be hearts and flowers. You're putting something out there that's real and can be gritty and
Right.
can be, that the whole transformational process isn't always, you know, a gondola ride. It's like it's not always easy. And if you introduce that journey to somebody else, I think there's a responsibility to be prepared to, if you are not the person that is qualified to help them through something, and they reach out to you, or you connected in some way, but to be able to introduce them to somebody who can, because it's not, I've worked a lot in the mental health space, and I've healed a lot of my own trauma, and I'm always really mindful about not leaving somebody in a traumatic space.
Absolutely. So there's so much we could dig into here, Donna. But I say that transformation doesn't usually come from everything being fine,
Yeah,
right? It comes through some kind of. It's not always trauma, but it's a turning point.
yeah.
It's a changing of your life, and so that's where it's the spark that starts
Hmm.
transformation
Yeah,
often. So
totally.
yeah, in our books, we always put a disclaimer about that kind of thing, that, this is not meant as therapy, or,
Hmm.
and to seek guidance and help when you need it. But we also, in most of our books, have a resources section at the end that has places you can call for help,
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that is so.
recommendations of people to work with and other books to read, and those
Mhm,
kinds of things. Because yeah, some of these, and even we put a little trigger warning if it's a if
mhm.
it's a particularly
Yeah,
troublesome story.
yeah.
We will say, if you are, just warning that this kind of topic might be talked about in this story. If you're not ready for that, please,
Yeah.
choose
I
another one.
I love that, because so many
So
people don't even recognize that that's a responsibility. And
yeah, yeah. It's not. The responsibility is also shared by the reader, to
absolutely,
take good care of themselves, right? So we try to
absolutely.
be upfront about what our stories are. For example, I've done very few children's books, but we have a
Mhm,
children's book that is put out written by Sarah Hart, who you might know, or some of our listeners might know, and she writes about the death of a pet. Right, so it's a real topic that needs to be talked about, can be triggering, and parents and kids need to know that topic is going to be addressed.
mhm.
So it's really, I think there is a responsibility for us authors to be upfront about, hey, this is some difficult topics we're going to be talking about, and take good care of yourself.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. Yeah,
absolutely, let people know.
it is. It's so important. And then, there's that whole vulnerability piece too that we were talking about before we went live. And the vulnerability, it's almost a dance that you go through as you're preparing to write a book, and then going through the process of writing a book. And um, I'm sure that you do this with clients, is preparing them for the editing process, because the editing process could be really harsh and surprising.
Yes,
And if somebody hasn't worked with like a developmental editor before, they're thinking commas and semicolons, but it's actually a
right.
redesign at times of what their book is. And all of that is just ripe for every brand of imposter syndrome that you could think of. So, what are some of the
Right.
stories that you have around that?
Right. So there's a couple. Yeah, so my first story is just when I was a professional writer, back when I was doing technical writing. We had a new writer come into the department, and she got her first edit back, and of course we used to do it with red pen, right? Red ink on paper. And it looks like someone's bled all over your work, and she took one look at it and ran to the bathroom crying.
Yeah.
So I never want to have anybody have that kind of experience. And that's one of the reasons I do what I do is so that people, because a manuscript, it can be very disappointing
You broke up there for a
for
moment.
the author, because I have to give them the bad news of, oh no, I think some rewriting. It
You're
needs
breaking up a little.
some massive re you right now, Donna, but I'll okay, it looks like we're back. But
Okay.
yeah, so when I work with people, one of my reasons is to help them have a really well thought out design and outline before they start writing the book, so
Mhm.
that they don't have to rework it after they've done all the work of writing it.
Yeah.
Because usually when people write a book on their own, it's way too long.
Yeah.
It's trying to be everything to everyone
Everyone. Yes.
instead of more dialed into your ideal, or what I call your soulmate reader, right?
Hmm.
So that we do that work up front so that
Good.
it
Oh,
saves them,
so
months and weeks of pain and heartache at the end of having to slash and cut things from the book that don't belong there, or might be another book, things like that. And then I also work with wonderful editors who do not like to rewrite books in their own voice, right?
good. Hmm.
It needs to be absolutely in the author's voice,
Yeah.
and be able to be elevated by the editor, not rewritten by the editor. So I work with a beautiful team of editors who, so hopefully
I keep losing you.
the editing process is not so painful.
That's good. That's good to hear. Yeah,
Doesn't make them go running to.
I've been involved with a few where they could have used you. It was a big developmental
Right.
editing job, and it was brutal on the author, and um, it's just good to be proactive with that, and that what you're offering is an invaluable service to be able to create the process up front, so the rest of it kind of goes smoothly. And with all of this, the only way that you know this is by experience. I mean, this whole trajectory of writing a book and all of the many parts that go with it, um, you you have to have done it before. Like, it's such a hard industry to break into, um, if you haven't done these things, because every part of it is so intimate and so different for each person and each experience.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I love about this work, is that each story, each book, each author is absolutely unique. And that's why it's so important that their voice is maintained, right?
Yeah,
Because their perspective is absolutely unique. And if that perspective doesn't come across, then the reader is not getting the full experience. So
yeah.
that's why, some books they sound a little bit more formal, some sound much more conversational and chatty,
Mm.
and that reflects the personality of the person who wrote it.
Yeah. I worked with an author last year, then she hired an editor that was trying to like change her whole book around, And she just like put her foot down and she was like, no, it's got to be my voice. And I was so proud of her because it could have easily gone the other way. I mean, she could have, it was her first book. She could have easily, bought into maybe somebody knows better than I know. And it was very personal and lots of traumatic experiences that she was working through. And I was just so proud of her for standing up for her own voice. And I know it was not easy for her to do that because there was so much around it that could have taken her down. And that just speaks to, readiness. Like if she had written this book 5 years ago, it would have been a totally different book because she had not come to the level of her own healing where she was comfortable with sharing the story.
Right. Right. Timing is important. And so, like I said, back to the editing, it's really hard to find a compatible editor because some have their own ego involved and they want to put their own viewpoint on it, or they want to, dumb it down or make it more academic or whatever their agenda is. So to find a really great editor who wants to work with you and really elevate and amplify your voice is great. But the timing is also really important because I think when you are in the middle of that healing or just starting your healing, it can be a trauma dump.
Yeah.
And that is so not kind to your readers.
No, no.
Because then you aren't supporting them in their healing and their growth and expansion. You're maybe just sharing your trauma because
Yeah.
it feels like that's what you need to do, but it's probably best done in therapy or, in some other personal development and growth before you actually commit to writing the book, because you do have a responsibility at
Yes.
that point
Yeah.
to take good care of yourself as well as your soulmate readers so that they can actually make their own transformation from it.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. Wholeheartedly. It's almost your book is your hero's journey, and you can't
Yeah,
write it until you've completed it. I mean, you've got to come home with the lessons and then share those lessons.
yeah.
You can't tell that story from the viper pit.
Right, right. And often what I find is when people do reach that place of where they feel kind of complete, at least, you're always going to deal with different levels of healing and that kind of thing. But when they feel complete, and ready to share it, they feel like it's almost a responsibility to share it
Yes,
because they
yes.
know it will help. I know I felt that way when I wrote The Gratitude Connection because I was like, wow, I found something that worked.
Yeah, yeah,
Everybody needs to know this. I
yes,
was
yeah.
really compelled to get it out there because I felt like it was kind of selfish to keep it to myself.
Yeah, and then, going back to the vulnerability hangover and then, marketing after that, I mean, then you're now amping yourself up for this whole new level that's connected to the visibility of this. And if you have not done that healing, I mean, that's like reopening the wound.
Right. But when you have done that healing and you're ready to share it, then it becomes kind of a joyous
Yes, yes, it's
connection with
totally
other
different. It's a
people. Yeah,
totally different. It everything about it is different because you're excited to share it and you know that it's going to make a difference, but you know that it's going to make a difference because you've completed that arc of your own hero's journey. You've lived to tell the story, literally.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so now it feels like, "Huh, I get to share it," instead of,
Instead of,
"Can
oh
I
my
share
God,
this? Is it
yeah.
gonna be can I survive it?"
Will I live another day?
Right, right, yeah.
It's a very different experience. Oh my goodness, I can't believe we're at a half an hour already. Is there anything else that you want to share before we close out?
Oh gosh, there's so much we could talk about,
I
Donna,
know
but I
we could
feel like
talk
we're
about this
so
all day long.
on the same page about, supporting authors
Mhm.
and sharing their journeys because, our voices are important. I think now more than ever, we need to put our light and our our experience and wisdom out into the world to help other people.
It's the whole reason I do what I do.
Exactly.
Both of us. And I like to wrap up these interviews with a wisdom bomb, something small, actionable, but with a little bit of a punch to it that people could take with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so Donna, I talk to my authors about a lot of this kind of thing. And when you are thinking about writing a book, I think we've touched on a few of the things that you need to consider. But really, I think the gift of any book is when the author can put themselves in the reader's shoes. And it's likely where they themselves were before they've gone
Mhm,
through their transformation. So you know what that feels like. You know what your reader is going through and might need at this moment. So when you can put yourself in those compassionate shoes and see things from their viewpoint, then it really helps you tell the story in a way that's not just, hey, I want to tell you a story, but I want to tell a story that's going to help you in some
mhm,
profound way. And so I think that's always, sometimes we get worried about, oh, what are people going to think about my story? What if it brings up shame? What if I feel too vulnerable? When you put yourself in the perspective of your reader, it kind of takes that away because it
mm.
makes them the star of the show, not you. Because your story, once you
So,
decide to share it, is not
mhm.
yours anymore. It's the world's, and it's going to mean something to those people who are hungry for your message.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And just a little footnote, you can do that with anything you write. It doesn't need to be an entire book.
Absolutely. Can be a social media post that's 2 paragraphs long. You can pack a lot of
Exactly.
power into that.
Okay. We got lots of nice comments here today. I've been
Yes,
popping
we
them up.
did. Thank you, everyone, for coming and for watching later, too.
Yes, and here is Amy's website, unleashyourinnerauthor.com. Please connect with her. The replay is here now, available on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. And if you have any comments or questions, please tag us, and we'll come back and we'll keep the conversation going, because this is an important one and it's something that we all need to do, whether we're writing books or we're writing blog posts or we're posting on social media. Our stories matter more than anything. So have a great Wednesday, everyone. We are back. We have interviews booked into April. And at the last Friday of the month, we're also hosting Meet Mingle events, which are just little virtual get togethers and just really to connect and get to know each other better. So all of the links are on my webpage, and just come and join us and connect with Amy. Here's her website again. Have a great Wednesday, everybody, and we will be back next week.
Thanks so much, Donna.
Thank you, Amy.